Welcome to another Monster Monday, the best way to start your week. We're returning to the wild world of Monster Hunter for this creature feature, and doing a bit of a deep dive. But be careful dredging dark waters. They often hide even darker dangers, such as the wave-dressed wyvern, the Duna. This colossal critter is the apex predator of the Scarlet Forest, and a leviathan to boot. The Duna makes considerable use of water, though rather than wielding it as a weapon such as the Mizusune or Ludroth, the Duna can create a protective veil of the water. This isn't a new concept, I've built plenty of creatures with that idea before, but the Duna notably uses it a bit more commonly, and actually changes up its tactics a bit depending on whether it's shrouded in a stream or not. As for determining the Duna's level, I knew it obviously had to be pretty beefy as an apex predator, but was surprised by the folks on DMM Discord suggesting that it should be 2 levels higher than the last monster we did. And some wondered if it shouldn't have been even higher based on how it fares in some turf wars. However, I'm hesitant to base a creature's level on turf wars specifically, so I did stick with the 9 per their suggestion there. The Duna itself sticks with the animal trade like many of the creatures of Monster Hunter, but I almost forgot to include amphibious, which is honestly just as, if not more important to its overall design. Getting into the build proper, this burly beast boasts an extreme strength, which is largely based on its sheer size and musculature. This really allows it to throw its weight around and facilitate its standard combat style. This same bulk affords it a constitution within the realm of high, which fits with its general build and toughness as well as some of the elemental manipulation abilities it exhibits, akin to the kineticist. However, its dexterity is merely moderate, its wisdom is low, and everything else is even lower still. It follows all those with the use of a moderate perception score, while it also possesses dark vision inspired by its habit of hunting during the drenching downpour, where light is limited. That leaves its skills, which are pretty basic and entirely based on its physicality. Some of its more slick movements warrant a low acrobatics, but its high athletics is much more noticeable and will aid it in swimming, though it does already have a swim speed to make use of. Diving into the deep for the defenses of this dark denizen, its sheer size sees it use a moderate armor class, which probably isn't too big of a surprise. However, its more moderate pool of hit points might come off as a bit strange given its constitution, weakness to electricity, and general design. But that particular aspect is to compensate for a later feature of its design. The Duna also has components that can be targeted at an almost extreme AC, and mostly affected strikes, as well as an ability that we will discuss in time. Before then, we have a pretty straightforward set of saving throws, which feature a high fortitude, a moderate reflex, and then a low will. The Duna does pull off some acrobatic maneuvers, but not enough to warrant having a higher reflex save than fortitude save. Looking into its offensive capabilities, the Duna has 2 melee strikes, which both feature a high attack bonus. Given the heft and weight of its claws, I actually didn't include Agile on them, but I designed them with the Sweep trait, which is effectively a discount Agile. It also has a slightly longer reach than its jaws, which left me to limit it to a moderate amount of damage. When it comes to its jaws strike, I couldn't see anything that really suited them trait-wise, so I simply settled on the reach based on its size, and assigned it a high damage value. From what I observed and read, attacks with its tails are somewhat incidental, which led to me excluding the extremity from its usual lineup. With the basics covered, we can start looking at some slightly more interesting aspects of the Duna. First things first, let's talk Water Veil. To use this ability, the Duna needs to be aware of its positioning, and needs to be in a body of water larger than itself, which might be difficult to pull off given its size. Be sure to keep that in mind when designing an encounter featuring the Duna. You're going to need something that it can make use of for this. Upon activation, this gives it a solid chunk of temporary hit points, and is something that it can do fairly regularly, which led to the design of its defenses. More than that, it slows the Duna down just a tiny bit, which is simulated through a penalty on its attacks. However, as noted in the Duna's description, this also makes its attacks hit heavier, which I express through a damage increase that bumps up its 2 strikes to high and extreme damage respectively. transforming the Duna into even more of a briny brute to batter your brave buds. Related to this ability, I gave the Duna a unique reaction in the form of Absorb Water, which we will probably only get to take advantage of once or twice when the heroes don't realize what exactly our Tidal Terror does. If they happen to target the Duna with a water ability, it can absorb this fluid to immediately use its Water Veil, which will at least refresh temporary hit points from it if it's already active. Sticking with its watery abilities, the Duna has Tidal Dive, which is inspired by the likes of its Twisted Body Slam and Underwater Dive. This features a classic combination of Stride and Strike, but instead of resulting in a more powerful or accurate strike, the Duna unleashes a wave as it crashes into the earth. This wave surges forward in a 30-foot cone that knocks creatures prone on a between high and extreme DC Fortitude save, and might actually carry them back if they end up critically failing that save. I opted to use this higher save here since it honestly isn't that brutal of an effect, but I did refrain from committing to an extreme DC because of its next ability, Hampering Tides. This was my attempt at resembling the water blight that the Duna can inflict after inundating ignoramuses with an influx of fluids. Water blight lowers stamina regeneration, which in turn lowers the actions that you can effectively use. As such, when the Duna lands a critical hit with a water attack, such as it strikes while it's under the effects of Water Veil, or a creature critically fails a save against its water effects, such as its Tidal Dive, they become slowed 1. I think fatigue could also work to capture this idea, but is harder for me to justify how it functions, how it happens within the lore of the game, but let me know if you have any other ideas when it comes to representing Water Blight. We finish off the arsenal of our aquatic Avenger with a slightly more mundane ability by the name of Crush. The Duna does a number of flops and body slams, and this is meant to resemble those. To that end, the Duna leaps, which has a range of 15 feet since it has a 30-foot move speed, and can end its leap in the space of other creatures. Creatures caught under the bulk of our buoyant behemoth take unlimited use area damage with a high DC save, and, should they fail that save, become trapped beneath it. This normally makes them grabbed and keeps them grabbed until the Duna moves or they escape against a moderate DC. Notably, the Duna doesn't need to do anything to actually maintain this grab, since it comes from it simply laying upon the creatures beneath it. Given the toughness of the Duna, I thought it was best suited to make some armor out of, which means that I don't have to worry about the negative affinity that its weapons have. Looking into the design of its actual armor, these scales are very apparent, so I settled on making it a scale mail armor set, though I added the aquadynamic trait to it given the Duna's status as an amphibious leviathan. Matching the Duna, it has the Water Veil ability, but I changed up how the armor's Water Veil functions, instead making it a minor resistance with a duration. This is inspired by the unique ability of the Duna armor, enhancing its defenses in certain circumstances. The wearer can end that duration and that effect to cast Flowing Strike, also resembling a bit of the Duna's Tidal Dive. Working in two aspects of my design for the Duna into this armor was a fun idea, and I hope you and your players get some good use out of it. As the raging waters settle, we've come to the end of the design for the Duna. This supersized stalker slips through streams and surfs onto the scene with smashes and slams that send suckers sprawling, sinking them into its soul-swallowing swamp. The Duna is an interesting creature, but its reliance on water for some of the more important aspects of its design might limit what sort of encounters you can run it in. It's a burly enough creature to run on its own, but you could also consider having it operate alongside some sort of aquakineticist or other creature that can control water, possibly having it catch the Duna in its area effects and allow it to absorb water to refresh its Water Veil. Let me know what you think of this creature and what other sorts of monsters you'd like to see in a comment. If you like what you see here and want more, be sure to leave a like and then subscribe to the channel. You can also check out the blog, which is linked below along with the Twitter and Discord. Thanks for watching and have a monstrous Monday.